Welcome to the Inside Digital Transformation Podcast. Inside Digital Transformation explores how organizations of every size and shape are using technology today to survive and thrive in the face of relentless change. If you are a business or technology leader charged with making the most of digital transformation in your organization, then this podcast is for you. And now here's your host, Alan Bernard, a technology journalist, editor, and copywriter who has been covering the intersection of business and technology for over 2 decades.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Tal Morgenstern, Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of Vulcan Cyber, about DevSecOps, what it is and how it's being used today to improve application security. We get into the complexities that are driving the need for placing security at the center of the software development process. We also explore some of the best practices and tools developers can use when implementing DevSecOps, as well as how the organization as a whole must change in order for these practices to make a material difference when applications move into production. Tal, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So as I laid out in the introduction, today we're talking about DevSecOps, which stands for Development, Security, and Operations. And probably a good place to start would be, Tal, with your definition of what that is.
At one time, they really tried to define this as, like a person having a dedicated security person that does the security work within the DevOps team. Today, we can see that this approach has failed at most cases, and I would try to define DevSecOps as the security approach for DevOps people. So having a security mindset within the DevOps team, within the DevOps department, is really the role of being kind of minded to security with everything that you do.
So as you're developing code, you're thinking of it in terms of security as much as you are in functionality features, right?
Really, how do we shift left with security in general and like with the DevOps and operational practices in total? So if you try to do security at the later stage, you're either doomed to fail or it's going to cost you a lot more. We've seen that it's much more better to actually try and do that at earlier stages. If you have the DevOps team that is managing all the configuration and the production environment and everything and part of the rollout, they have the access, the capability, the know-how to actually catch those things with the proper guidance. And I think that's what has been lacking for a long time, the training and the proper tools which emerged in the last few years.
Okay. So why does it cost more if you catch a bug later in the process?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's look at the software that is already deployed and working. Let's assume that we have a security issue there, and we need to fix it. We would need to make the change and some testing environment, make sure that everything actually works, look at the impact to our actual customers, and then plan. Maybe we need downtime. Maybe we'll have a performance hit. So there are a lot of operational concerns once you do that on a running application versus if you catch that change before it has been rolled out, you're able to do the upgrade, do the change before you have actual users on it. Then in most cases, it would be much more easier to make the shift and faster. So
better, faster, cheaper. Basically.
Yeah. And okay. I think when talking about security, like when you think about faster in terms of security standards, it's not like to be fast is not like anything else, like to release fast or to work fast. It's also about being faster than the attackers. So when we measure SLAs, SLOs in security, it's not only about how fast can we be in doing some procedure, but also are we faster than the opposition, the people that are actually trying to exploit these kind of things, and we should always think about being faster than them.
Right. So you were talking about catching bugs after post-production, right? After things are running. But, it's my understanding in the research that I've done that even in DevOps, you're still testing for bugs before things get pushed to production, right? I mean, at least you should be, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
right? So that's in theory, right? So, but even then though, when you find a bug at that late stage, just just before it goes into production, that's still costly because why? Because the development teams have moved on to other projects. They may not, right? That type of thing. Because it could be what, a few months or weeks between a bug being found when it's just about to go into production versus when it's actively being developed and tested on the other side, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's the time, it's the context switching for the actual team that needs to go back and actually fix it. So think about yourself, like even in the supermarket, like if you arrange your shopping list,
My wife
in a
does
particular,
that. My wife does that. She
because
does. Yeah.
she's great, she's super efficient, and
Yeah.
so it's kind of the same thing. So if you go, you buy your you're not going to buy your cereal box and then come back and, oh, I need another cereal box. Like,
Right.
you want to do all of that in the same, like we eventually want to be efficient, and security is not different. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, then the other thing I think that you're saving a cost is when you have to pull people off of other projects, because developers are high commodity. I don't want to talk about people like that in those terms,
Yeah.
but in high demand, right? Their skill sets are on, so they're not sitting around waiting for something to do, right?
Yeah.
And so you're going to delay other projects. You're going to delay other important, feature rollouts, bug fixes on running applications, whatever it may be, right?
Definitely, and it's also about capabilities. You need to see where can you actually shift focus to the people that can solve the problems, but maybe they can also do other stuff. So you need to see where you put your focus on.
Gotcha. One of the things that you mentioned is that you say, because I was, my research, I came across a video of somebody that does that job, which is the security portion in the middle of a dev, between dev and ops, right? And it was, he was talking about it in present tense, that's how it's executed, but you've kind of indicated that model isn't functional for DevSecOps. But I'm thinking dev guys are dev guys. They're not security people. They're not operations people. They're not infrastructure people. They know the infrastructure is going to run on, but they don't know how to run the infrastructure, right? And that type of thing. So how do you bake security into a developer's mindset? Is it just a laundry list? Is it just checkboxes, bullet points, a set of tools that they have to run, that type of thing?
I wish. So it's a bunch of different stuff. So first of all, it is awareness. So really understanding that there is a problem, understanding that that there are security risks in the application that your organization is developing. And understanding those particular risks. That the risks are different if you're a bank, or if you're in online shopping, or you work in a factory. So they all have risks. It's just different risks. So first of all, having the developers understand that, and not only the developers, the operational folks and everyone.
So security as a mindset, basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
Secondly, is to have the proper tools. There are many tools.
Lots.
Yeah, lots and lots of tools. So this is the responsibility of the security team, the security person, to get. So this is and you need tools that actually, again, fit your organization. And I would say number 3 is to build a process with those tools that fits the day-to-day workflow. So you mentioned developers. Developers work in Jira. In some organization, that's like a common tool. So have the security issues piped into Jira. Have the security, if your company is working in agile in sprints, so decide on the number of vulnerabilities or security issues you want to solve within a given sprint. Not really trying to reinvent the wheel with when it comes to security, but mostly streamlining. This is part of all the other initiatives. Eventually, it's so think about the risk is on the application owner. So you have your website, you're selling stuff online. You have your warehouses, you have
supply
your
chain,
inventory, supply chain, the whole thing. You have your vendors.
Ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. And you have your vendors. You maybe have some marketing activities. So four of these different departments, for example, and you have an owner for each department. So each department head, they need to understand the risk for their particular group within the organization and make the decision. So let's take the online shopping example. If you have a vulnerability, like a critical vulnerability on the website, you're gonna have someone fix it. But
Right.
let's say it's a week before Christmas and you're selling stuff on the website. Are you gonna make those changes? It's a huge operational concern.
Right, sure. No.
So now maybe the tips, that tips the scale in terms, and as the business owner, you are probably the most, if you have the proper data, you are the most equipped person to make these big decisions.
Right. So that's a risk assessment that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, but we need to get into this ongoing mindset of risk assessment and kind of. So I'm not saying that again that as like a C-level, you should be involved in any decision, or like a VP. Right. You should not be involved in any decision, but you should dictate a policy that is relevant to your mindset as an executive.
And this being one of those policies, right? This is kind of the reason I'm trying to keep it at a level where business leaders can get, understand what it is that they need to be thinking about as far as security, right? And so if DevSecOps is the right way to go for your organization, it may not be, right? But if it's the right way to go, I mean, if you're fully cloud native and running SaaS apps, then DevSecOps isn't really a concern for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any developers. So if you don't have developers, you don't have CI/CD, you don't have a pipeline, you're not running infrastructure, this is irrelevant to you.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you're Lockheed Martin or pick a big firm today, Bank of America or something, then you got how many thousands of developers toiling away in the back room. This is important stuff for you, right? Yeah. So at that level, you're going to say, well, we need to look into DevSecOps, and then if it's the right thing, you need to push it out to the organization and make it policy, right? At that point.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, and this is the idea of including all the stakeholders in the security mindset, right? To pull it back into, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So I'm curious, how long has DevSecOps been around? It seems like there's a lot written about it. It's easy to find a ton of information, but at the same time, it's like Agile. Agile's only being used in something like, I don't know, 40 or 50% of the IT shops out there today. And it's been around for 20 years or something, right? So anything that seems new is typically not in IT. So I'm just curious, has it been around for a while, or is it maybe give me a brief history if you can.
So I think roughly around 10 years as a concept, but really I have seen this mature really in the last 5 years or so to be something that is more in practice. Again, like as any new thing, I think people are trying to understand how to do it, how to adopt this, and there's various ways. By the way, with like you gave the Agile example, but it's somewhat similar. You need to find the right fit for you.
Okay, I mean, it was implemented. Why was it developed? What is the problem that DevSecOps solves, for example, or attempts to solve through? Right?
Yeah, so
more accurate.
Think 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you wanted to develop software. You would go to one big vendor. So I used to work with either Microsoft or IBM, and kind of you're gonna build your entire project around that, one or two vendors maybe, and they're gonna give you everything. From like the dev tools to like databases, application servers, and so and so. And then when you have an issue or a security issue, you would usually go to the vendor, and they would take a few weeks or days to come up with a fix, and that was it. Today, when you're working with, most projects are built with many different open source components, homegrown components, and proprietary, vendors and so on. So actually just, keeping tabs on this, actually building this and kind of, and the speed that everything is going and like changes, like for our application, like we build the application a few times a day. We release the application, changes to the application every day. So
okay, wow.
So the speed is very, very high. And we tried as an industry, we tried to automate security in some sense. We try to push the responsibilities to kind of the backend developers or the operational folks, but it doesn't work at those speeds. You cannot have an operation like a pure operation person trying to solve vulnerabilities when everything is changing on a daily basis. So
and everything's running because you're an ops.
And everything's running. Yeah. And by the way, same thing. Availability, stability standards have gone like way up. Like sure. 3 nines is like nothing today when you're talking about like cloud and Kubernetes and like all these infrastructures. So it's like
you got 100 millisecond response times before somebody clicks away. I mean, that's not even a blink of an eye at this point, right?
Exactly. So you have to raise the standards, and one way to raise the standard in security is actually getting the security in that middle ground where the application code is piping through the CI/CD pipeline, and you got to catch that before it goes to production.
The shift away from castle and moat thinking as far as security goes, right? Perimeter first, and the adoption of zero trust, for example, right? All of these things feed backwards through the development cycle into the applications that have to accommodate new security postures. You just can't put a password and username and password on front of your network and hope for the best. It's not going to work anymore, right? And so the developers have to be aware of that and then architect or build the software that they're making around those concepts, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What I saw in there was this video from 2019 from the Black Hat conference, which I found very educational. But I mean, it seems to me that there's a lot of automation in DevOps, and there's even more automation in DevSecOps, right? And that at various stages in the development pipeline, you are running scans using one of 50 or 60 or 100 tools. I mean, that's insane. And for every programming language, you have separate tools, right? So, is that good enough?
I wish it was that simple. So running the tools is a good start, but then really fast, you're going to hit the next mode, which is what do I actually do with all of these results? I have thousands results, and I can only fix 2 a day, 10 a day, 5 a day. So how do you prioritize those?
Oh, so let me ask you that. So, the way this guy was doing the presentation, he had scripted it for the presentation. So it made it look probably a lot easier than it is. But my guess is developers are having to go back into the code and hand fix, right? This is kind of a manual process, at least partly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But there is automated fixes as well that the tools are executing.
Yeah, definitely. So there's in kind of this vulnerability management and dev process, there's tools that can tell you whether your code, your developers have made some security fault within the code that they're writing, or some of the packages that they're using are vulnerable. And in this case, those libraries can be updated usually and sometimes automated. Again, there is a chance that this will break the system. You'll have a non-compatible version, and then things stop working. So you always need to be minded of that. And I'm all for automating as much as you can within that, but also you don't want to do more than you should. So really getting some business context to prioritizing the right vulnerability, getting some technical context, getting some temporal understanding, like understanding whether these vulnerability can actually be exploited within that given environment, within your specific environment, that will go a long way in prioritizing and understanding what you actually need to fix, and then focusing on those critical vulnerability makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot more sense, because then you're more efficient with your dev resources.
Sounds to me like developers are going to require ongoing security training.
Yeah, that's an ongoing trend, and also the tools need to evolve to the sense that they can speak more in a more humane language to developers, and kind of give them the understanding of,
context.
Exactly, context. This is the problem. This is what's going to happen if you're not going to fix this. This is how you should fix this, and then give them the option and kind of give them the ability to make the right choice, to prioritize. Okay, is this more important than this other bug that I have to fix? Because I've been working in security for a long time, and have good admiration for the field, but still companies need to make money. So security is not more important than actually generating revenue. So if the application doesn't work, it's not going to matter if there's a security issue. So, but
right. You can't use multi-factor authentication at every stage of the process, otherwise you wouldn't be able to use the application. So
exactly. So you need the right balance. Yeah.
So what makes cloud so uniquely difficult when it comes to DevSecOps? Or maybe is that even the right way to put it? Is it uniquely difficult when it comes to DevSecOps?
So I don't know if it's uniquely difficult for DevSecOps, but I think cloud poses unique security challenges for organizations, in the sense that, again, know-how for a lot of the organizations, just the cloud infrastructure is new. They don't know it as well as they know the on-premise tool. Just think about like all the regular stuff, like networking is very different, storage handling is very different, how you ship your application, everything is somewhat different, and there's a knowledge gap, and that's something that that organizations need to be able to close that gap. And when you have a technology know-how gap, you also have a security know-how gap. So it's much harder to understand what you need to do. So that's, I think, one challenge. The second challenge is it keeps on changing. So they add new capabilities, they shift things around. So just keeping up with the pace is also challenging in a sense. And maybe the third, which is, it's usually talked about a lot, but there is no perimeter anymore. So you mentioned zero trust, you mentioned the whole concept of like, so it's a concept change that the organization needs to understand, everybody around needs to understand, that there is no like, okay, we lock the data center and that's it, like our data is safe now. There are other controls that need to be put in place, like strong authentication that you mentioned, and data governance policies and tools that should support these processes and make sure that the data is secure and the applications and platforms are secure.
Okay, I guess one of the questions I would have if I was a business person listening to this is, don't cloud providers give me that security that I need when I push my applications to them? The hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, that type of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So they do a lot. And you can definitely take advantage of the solutions and the tools that they provide. But they are pushing what is called the shared responsibility model. And the shared responsibility model means that some of the things like physical security is, of course, the responsibility of the cloud vendor. But how you configure your end platform, how do you configure your operating system, is eventually the user's responsibility. So you still have a responsibility of managing the configuration right, and not doing things that could eventually harm you. So that and making sure that things are up to date in terms of patching and so on. But they have a lot of best practices. They do a lot of education. They provide a lot of tools, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, but the application security is on your side, basically.
Yeah, the
right?
application security is going to be on your side for a very long time.
So if you don't do multi-factor authentication, that's not on your cloud provider.
No. The
Right.
implementation, and they have some implementation guides. They can help with that. There's also third-party tools. There's a lot of reasons which tools to buy or where to spend your money.
And that's actually one of the challenges, right? Is too many tools, right? You get alert fatigue and things like that, right? And now you're also integrating the SOC, right? The Security Operations Center people in the SIEM, right? To try to manage all these alerts, or if you're integrating it at that level, right? At the network level. So, well, what makes cloud uniquely different from on-prem? Because you can have private cloud, right? And you're still pushing stuff out to mobile. It's not the fact that you're using a cloud provider that makes it more difficult, right? But it's the nature of the cloud environment that really is at play here. Microservices, containers, right? That type of thing. Ephemeral, containers spin up and down on a regular basis. They're not, it's not a static environment, right? It's not one server, one application like it used to be with one network, Cat5 going into the back of the server, right?
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of both. When you're working with cloud providers, so you gain a lot of ability to, push some responsibilities onto the cloud vendor. So they do the heavy lifting on some of the stuff, which is, by the way, I think it's great, but you lose some visibility to those areas. Similarly, when you talk about containers and Kubernetes and ephemeral environments, I think the main challenge there is the lack of visibility. We see that, by the way, also when developing software. It's not only when facing with security challenges. Just gaining the proper visibility to what exactly is happening is a challenge with these new environment. But it also provides a lot of opportunity. When you have containers that are constantly up to date, you also have the ability to update their security posture constantly. So if you take advantage of this infrastructure, you can actually achieve a much higher security level than ever before. That's astonishing. It's just to build the right infrastructure.
So if on the dev side though, and I am developing my application to run on AWS, what are the things I have to take into consideration that I wouldn't if I was building that same app for an on-prem deployment?
So right? Again, one big difference is that, so let's do a one-to-one. So if you're deploying a VM on-prem or an EC2 or a VM on a cloud provider, then you are accessing that VM when it's on a cloud provider. You're accessing that VM via the internet. So you need to make sure that you're the only one that can actually access this VM. We did a test one. It was a couple of years ago. We uploaded, I think it was a Windows box to the cloud, and we forgot to close one of the ports. We had it public open. I think it took like 5 hours, and we lost the machine, meaning someone took over the machine and was running it. So, and they deployed some kind of crypto miner on it, and right. it was like 5 hours.
So I've heard 10 minutes from other people.
Yeah, probably now. Like this story is like 5 years old. So it took, and we didn't have any information on it, but really it's a big risk. You don't want to. So
is DevSecOps inherently more difficult because of cloud? Or is it just different?
I would say it's just different. Again, there are many opportunities with the cloud, so potentially even better when leveraging cloud technology as compared to doing this on-prem, because some of the stuff you don't need to worry. You can actually use managed services, which may cost a little more, or they pay per use. So I actually prefer that module compared to, buying a bunch of hardware and not knowing how much you're utilizing it. So in that respect, it's even easier. So you can actually prove that you're doing the right stuff, when you're utilizing your hardware and your software.
Okay. All right. So what we touched on some of this in the beginning, but what are some of the best practices that people want to implement around DevSecOps?
if you don't have anything, get the proper tools. It's not a plug. There's like a bunch of open source tools. Start small. Start with the tools that are that you feel comfortable with. Me personally, I'm not the one that would go to like necessarily like a best in class, but more for whatever operationally works for you. So I think operations is always more challenging than, you know, getting like the most advanced results or you know, getting, you know, or deploying 10 different tools and then not being able to actually operationalize those. So really considering how just going back to the processes, how the process would work. That's, I think, the first step. And to improve, to your point of improving whatever you have, just reassess the tools that you have and make sure that they're working properly and that they're the ones that you actually need. So some organizations, they may have tools that used to work really nice on-prem, but now are less useful when moving to the cloud. And we see this shift in customers shifting from more traditional tools to newer tools and newer platforms when they are shifting to the cloud. That's one thing. The other thing is really get everyone on board. So that goes back to the people. It's not like DevSecOps is not going to be able to work if you don't have the stakeholders involved, if you don't have the R&D leaders that are leading this, that are carrying the torch, and making sure that you know, the developer understands, the team leaders understand, the department heads, and really pushing this initiative. It kind of sounds, I don't know, sometimes these kind of things sound trivial. We see that all the time.
Well, I think it may be a mistake that certainly business people can make is they think it's a technology problem and only a technology, right? And so, okay. And so I think kind of what I'm hearing from you is, you know, you got to develop your process. You got to know what you're implementing, grab a framework. I'm sure there's many out there that you can take a look at, right? I think NIST has them. And so maybe start there, right? If you don't know quite where to begin. But then the other thing, though, is, you know, from my previous comment, it really is an all of organization problem today, security, right?
I used to do consulting work back in the day, and even like the people that used to object the most to security finding and say, I don't understand. Like once you get to them and make them understand, again, the risk, the implications of you know, of what is going on and what's happening, because a lot of people, they don't believe. We used to do workshops for developers and teach them to hack applications. Really, like one day or even just a few hours, and really just a workshop and show them, hey, this is an application. You can see there is a login screen here. You cannot bypass this. And now I'm going to give you some tools and you're going to try this yourself. And after an hour, they actually succeed and hack the box. And they're like, oh my God, now I need to go and research. And I'm not 100% of them that are going to be like in love with security, but most of them understand the problem. And some of them, by the way, would be fascinated by this and would continue the research and will be advocates for security within their small organizations. So definitely training and know-how and acknowledging that there is an issue, it's key.
Okay. As far as the tech goes, that, you know, we mentioned there's a bunch of tools. It kind of is a tools-based approach, right? To actually finding bugs. It's not something you're going to do manually with a, you know, hunting 100,000 lines of code. You're just not going to, right? And you brought in 30 open source libraries, you know, that it's just, you're not going to find it without the tools. Do they work? I mean, is the tech fairly sound at finding bugs and fixing them and that type of thing?
So the tech is constantly improving. I think it's okay. There's a few elements to this. So one, on the libraries and package side, really there's been an enormous evolution in kind of the tooling and the capabilities. And I think we are now in a fairly good stance where it comes to detecting those open source vulnerabilities and third-party vulnerabilities. That's constantly improving. I think in the developer code, like the static code, there's still a long way to go. It's still really hard to understand what human beings are doing with all the AI and everything that's going on. It's still very difficult to understand large pieces of code of complex software and understand where are the real bugs. But some of the additional controls, apart from tools, are bug bounty programs, which if you're not familiar with is
yeah, I'm familiar. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like it's a way to get a bunch of hackers basically that would hack your application for and get paid by the findings that they actually do, and penetration tests, and of course manual code reviews that we do. When I have this conversation on automation, I think you always get to this to the same dilemma or like mindset where when you talk to people about automation, there is a 0 or 1 concept, like, oh, I do automation, then everything is automated, and like there's 0 manual work. But actually, when you talk about security automation, so going to and implementing all these tools and implementing all these processes, it's not going to mean you're going to have 100% automation, but you are able to automate a lot of the steps. And we're in this journey. We've been able to automate the code review to some extent. We've been able to automate the detection of vulnerable packages to a very nice extent. Now we're starting to automate some of the triaging and assigning of different actions and who needs to do what. And we're automating the prioritization. That's been a huge challenge in recent years, and really trying to understand how to do that. So we have ways to go, but definitely automation is the path to go, and we will still see improvements in this space every couple of weeks, honestly.
All right, well, we're coming up on the hour, Tal. I've got plenty to work with on my side. Is there anything you want to finish up with?
It's been a pleasure. Hopefully, there's some things that people can learn and kind of educate from this. That's at least my takeaway from that.
All right, well, Tal, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
If you like this episode, please tell your friends and subscribe. We post new episodes every week. If you'd like to join our mailing list, become a guest, or suggest topics for future episodes, you can find us on LinkedIn, on our landing page at anchor.fm/InsideDT, or at InsideDT.net. Talk to you soon.